So, we're doing another occult video. What is this? A parallel dimension? Wait, I'm growing a beard. What is this? Evil Dimension Joe? Oh shit! So I did a video on why I left the occult, and in that video I mentioned that there's still fundamentals that I use in my daily life, and I had a few people ask me, what are these fundamentals you still use? So this video is my attempt to take some fundamentals that I learned from the occult and explain how they're useful in normal life. I'm not even going to explain them in an occulty way. I'm not even going to draw connections for people as to what the occult versions of these are, because I don't feel like that's necessary. I think if you're someone who practices the occult, you're going to be like, oh yeah, that is what this particular practice does, or that particular practice does. And if you're not, you really don't need that information. But this is also not an all-inclusive, all of the fundamentals of being an occultist or any of that stuff. This is just literally a list of some fundamentals from occultism that stuck with me and that now have normalish names and are very good practices that I think are good for people, whether they're involved in occult or non-occult or any of that stuff. Obviously, I think that because I'm no longer involved in the occult, but I still use them. So, yeah, that's a good enough intro for this. The number one fundamental that I would recommend to anyone is clearing your mind. People are going to be like, no shit, Sherlock. There's a bunch of ways to do this. One of the main ways is meditation. So when people talk about meditating, there's different ways. There's meditation for trance work and things like that. I'm not talking about that style of meditation. We're not trying to go into a trance when you're just trying to clear your mind. This is more what some people would call grounding meditation. The idea being to silence your thoughts, get into that state where you're just in the moment and let yourself be that way for a while. And that can be very healing for you, very good for relieving stress, things like that. It's an excellent way of, like, if you're having a panic attack, for example, going into something similar to a meditation can help. Just like sit for a moment, breathe, pay attention to your breath, let go of your thoughts, that type of thing. So if you're someone who meditates, you already know what I'm talking about. But clearing your mind doesn't necessarily have to be something as die-hard as meditation. I've heard some people talk about it as taking one conscious breath, and that's a step in the right direction too. And that's maybe even more useful on a day-to-day basis. When you're in a situation and things are looking like they're starting to you're losing control, let's say. You're starting to act and react to things that are happening instead of thinking things through. You stop, take a breath, clear your thoughts, and then reanalyze the situation. And it can literally take a couple seconds, but just knowing to do that can be the difference in making the right decision and making the wrong decision. And I have a friend, Friar Pesel, who calls this taking a pause. And I think that's a perfect way to explain it. And if you're someone, by the way, who's interested in Golden Dawn tradition occultism, since that's not something that I teach anymore, I would recommend his channel. I'll put a link to it in the description below. So the second big thing, fundamental, that I would recommend is replacing negative thoughts with positive thoughts. Now, they don't necessarily say in different occult practices that that's what they're doing, but a lot of this spending time focusing on this or that or the other thing is to get you to think a different way than you were thinking before. And one of the major changes is to get you to stop using negative thoughts and start using positive thoughts. Now, this gets confused a lot in the modern era with people thinking this means you have to always be upbeat or happy or positive. That's not exactly what it is. It's more about not thinking of things from a negative perspective or a negative slant. So you can still be angry or mad as hell about something, but still have positive thoughts as opposed to negative thoughts relating to yourself and the situation. So, example, if a bridge collapses, you're not going to be like, oh, well, that was meant to be. That's the wrong type of positive thoughts. That's where people have taken this, but that's never where it was supposed to be. But you can separate yourself out to not see it as just a bad thing. You can see it as a thing that happened. You can say, that happened, and I didn't like it. And you can separate those two things out. But you don't necessarily feel like the world is caving in on you or that evil is taking over, chaos is spread. That's a big part of it. So, breaking away from those, why is life so horrible when you see something like that? That thought has nothing to do with the bridge collapsing. That's your own stuff going on. And so what you're focusing on is noticing times when you think like that, noticing times when you put a negative spin on something immediately or when you use negative language to talk about something. And what do I mean by negative language? I mean, so So you may have a thought at some point based on something you've done where you start to beat yourself up. You might say like, oh man, I'm a loser. I always mess this up, things like that. You're kind of reinforcing what just happened and blaming yourself. You're spending this time like blame, 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 blame. That doesn't help you at all. That blaming can be addictive because, there's something to this like feeling sorry for yourself that actually gives a little bit of a high. I don't really know if there's science behind that, but it sure seems to be the case. And so getting yourself unaddicted to constant blaming yourself and bashing on yourself is mainly what this is about. And that's the first step, and then you take that step outward and stop bashing and blaming other people for things the same way. Start looking at things as events that happened and then say, okay, I feel this way about it. Now what am I going to do about it? That's a more positive, forward-thinking attitude. You're no longer talking about your regrets or a deep, dark feeling or foreboding of powerlessness, but instead you're concentrating on this forward movement. What's my next step? How am I going to make sure I don't do that again? Things like that. This kind of empowerment to action is something that is taught in a large number of ways within different occult practices, and it's key to any of these practices seeming practical, because all of them are going to lead you to some form of spellcasting or whatever it is, which ultimately is to get you to do different things and change your own life. And in my opinion, what's really changing your life is this call to action attitude that you get from these fundamentals. So again, pay attention to when you're negatively putting yourself down or negatively putting other people down or things like that. And when it isn't objective, it's just pure emotional. And then separate from that for a second. And I don't mean don't be emotional about it. You can definitely be like, I'm angry. That's fine. But admitting you're angry is different than saying I'm useless or something like that. You don't throw a blame onto it. Just feel the emotion you're feeling. Admit it's whatever emotion it is, and then be like, cool, what am I going to do now? And if the answer is, well, I'm not going to do anything because I'm not going to, that's fine too, but it's still positive. It's an action-based what's happening. It's not I'm unable to do anything. Like, no. What am I doing? Even if it's nothing, just say, I'm not going to do anything about that, and move on. But the point is this, like, don't get bogged down in this negativity, because that is just going to spiral you into self-destructive behaviors. The third one on the list is accepting challenges, and religion and belief in deities can actually help you with this more than not having that belief, because it's easy to take this mindset when you're religious or when you have this belief in deities to go, I am being challenged now. There's a point to what's happening to me. And if you take that mindset on instead of like the world is dumping on me, you automatically get this accept challenges mindset, where you start to get into a bad situation, you go, okay, what can I learn from this? How do I overcome this? What am I going to do next? What am I taking away from this? What's my lessons from this challenge? As opposed to seeing things as negative again. But when you're not religious, you're not going from a deity point of view, you're just responsible to have that attitude. You have to look at things that happen as challenges. And that doesn't mean you can't be pissed they're happening. It doesn't mean they're not shitty. But it means that when you're in the shit, you have a part of you that's going, how am I learning from this? What am I going to do in the future so either this doesn't happen again or so that I gain something out of this? Even if you've lost a bunch from something that happened, how do you now start to gain again? You start to get this mindset of every challenge has gold within it. It may not be that you're getting more gold from the challenge than if it didn't happen, but you're getting something out of it. And finding those nuggets of gold in the challenge changes your perspective about bad circumstances. It makes it so that you're able to tackle them, you're able to run straight into them, and sometimes maybe even head towards certain challenges that you have to face earlier and not letting them build up. You start to say, okay, I see this challenge coming, let's tackle this now. And that, again, that positive attitude, that forward momentum, and that's why I'm trying to use the word positive here. This like active, positive engagement as opposed to negative, pulling back, letting things happen to you engagement. All right, the fourth fundamental is accepting truth. This is the ultimate, the hardest, the major, biggest thing. And this is one that you never stop working on for your entire life, basically. It's not something where it's like, boom, mastered that, I accepted all the truths about myself. This is kind of the granddaddy, the whole package, the everything. And it's funny because accepting truth about myself is how I eventually left the occult, when I started to see certain aspects of what I was believing were what I wanted to believe, not what I necessarily could prove. I started to realize, okay, I'm not being authentically true with myself here, and that's what pulled me away from the occult. So my pull away from the occult was through occult practices, as funny as that is. But whatever, you don't need the occult in order to do any of these, just like I said. So authentic truth is being able to look at yourself, see an action you're having, go, why am I doing this? And then correctly answer yourself to say, okay, why am I mad? So, for example, somebody says something to you in a YouTube comment or something, and you get pissed off. And now's the good time for the first step, clearing your mind. Take a moment before you flame war, start typing back to them. Take a moment, breathe, clear your mind, look at it again, look at what they're saying, and then ask yourself the question, why am I mad about this? What's really going on? And if you're still feeling mad, like after that breath, you're still angry, there's something that they poked in you. There's some truth that they popped on you that just, and even if they're not 100% right, it doesn't mean like, oh, everything other people say is right. Sometimes people are full of shit. Don't worry about it. If something keeps irritating you, though, you analyze it. You say, okay, why is this irritating me? What am I hiding from myself about why I'm angry about this? And the truth is not always something you want to reveal. And so that's the type of authentic truth I'm talking about, the kind of hard realizations of when you're projecting your emotional states onto other people, when you're defending ideas because you're afraid of what it would mean if those ideas weren't correct or things like that. And those kind of authentic truths help you to let go of false beliefs. And this can also be used as a method of getting rid of fears. The combination of authentic truth, which is accepting when you're actually afraid of something, and accepting when that's unfounded, as opposed to when it's just, you probably should be. Like, if I'm afraid of an alligator that comes out at me, that's normal. That's a good, healthy response to seeing an alligator come at me. But if I'm afraid of going up a ladder that's perfectly steady and I've already checked it and made sure it's good, then that's a fear of heights that is unfounded. I'm doing something safe, but I'm afraid of it. So accepting the truth that I am afraid, instead of going like, whoa, this is because of it, let it go. Just be like, I'm afraid. Again, just the raw emotion. I'm afraid. I'm feeling fear. Not negative, why am I such a loser? Don't do that. Go, okay, what am I going to do about it? Accept challenges. Let's go up on this ladder anyway, but allow myself to feel the fear, and let me see through doing this that nothing bad happens from it. And then we'll do that again another day, and then another time. And the next time it comes up, we'll challenge ourselves again. But eventually, that pattern of thinking that this is a scary or bad thing will be replaced with the realization that I can do this. And that is what authentic truth mixed with these other steps does for you. So you're seeing how all of these work together now. And some of you, of course, already know this. Then we have affirmations. So affirmations are for the times when you really need to get this point across to yourself. You realize you have something about your thinking is off from how you want it to be. And you can see that it would be more healthy to view things a slightly different way, but you're just having trouble getting that into your mind. The challenge step is a little too hard still. Well, then we do affirmation. So affirmation is you'll write down a phrase or something like that tells yourself something you want to believe about yourself. Now, not just some random shit that you wish was true, but something that you know is actually true, but that you constantly forget. For example, if you know, my opinions are as valid as anyone else's, but you're constantly calling yourself a loser and downplaying your opinions, then you're like, okay, I know the real fact is that my opinions are as valid as everybody else's is, but for some reason, whatever's going on in my psychological makeup is just not getting it. So you're like, okay, affirmation time. I'm going to write that out as a sentence. My opinions are as valid as everyone else's. And then every morning, I'm going to say this to myself 5 times, maybe more if it takes more. But say it until you either feel like, yeah, I got it. Or you feel like, okay, that's right. And then go about your day. And that's all an affirmation is. But you do it every day for like a month or more. And there's some point in here where you'll start to see your behavior change. And don't expect it quick. It's not like the same day you're like, look, I'm better now. It's just that at some point down the line, you'll get into a situation where you feel yourself start to have the old behavior, and that affirmation you've been saying will play through your head. It jumps in the way. You're like about to say something to say like, you know what, my idea was stupid, but right before the words come out of your mouth, you hear, my thoughts are as valid as everyone else's. My opinions are just as valid. Like it comes back to you and you're like, whoa, that's that affirmation. And then you don't say what you were going to say. You continue with your opinion. And then we're back to that challenges thing. This was hard for you, but your mind has now seen that you did this and you were okay. And this is the way you are now. And after you've had that happen enough times, it becomes a regular part of you. You almost don't recognize the part of you that used to believe the other way. So that's, again, you're seeing how all of these work together. And the very last one of all is learning to change perspectives, which requires all that other stuff first. You need to know yourself pretty well before you can change your perspective. Otherwise, you might just be shifting to something more in attunement with your own perspective if you don't really know yourself that well. But being able to be like, okay, here's who I am from doing all these other practices. Okay, I got this. And maybe you don't know deep who you are, but you understand at least that you can be honest with yourself. And you see something that you're uncomfortable with, but that other people aren't. And you say, okay, well, let me look at it from their perspective. Let me role play. Let me pretend to be them and try to understand how they see it. And if this is hard to do early in, a lot of different occult techniques, I know I didn't say I was going to go into what they actually do, but I break my own rules because why not? A lot of different occult techniques will have you try to identify as objects. You might say, okay, I'm going to stare at a lamp while I meditate, and meditate on the idea of what does it mean to be a lamp. And what you're really doing here, it's partially clearing your mind, but it's partially just an exercise of trying to leave your perspective a giant distance, because obviously a lamp doesn't think and act and stuff, so you're never going to know what it's like to be a lamp. But the exercise of trying to do something that's pretty impossible like that can actually help you to just like flex those muscles within your brain, get that process started, and then eventually you start thinking, well, you know, what if I had grown up in the situation of this other person? And you can start to see how your own life would be different, how you might act different. What if I had this addiction or that addiction that I don't? How would I deal with it? How would that affect me? And again, don't be dishonest. We don't be like, I would be fine. Like, no. Honesty, authentic honesty, authentic truth. So, you know, these processes are basically a process of rewiring the way you look at yourself and rewiring the way you look at the world. And all of that is the fundamentals of basically any occult practice, whether it's voodoo, whether it's Golden Dawn, whether it's, name it, Left Hand Path. They all have some version of this. They're usually hidden under some kind of mystical things you're doing or styling, but this happens as part of it. Now, what's the one that I didn't talk about that all of them have? Trance work. And we've already talked about why I'm not big into trance anymore. Because trance is kind of like a life hack. If you can get yourself into a trance hypnotic state and then feed your mind suggestions, you can kind of skip steps and try to make yourself active. And it's kind of like a super affirmation. But I've found there's a lot of trouble with this. I mean, you're basically playing around with stuff you're not, in your mind, you shouldn't be playing around with, in my opinion. Now, everybody has their own thing. If that's what you do, cool. But all spellcasting and things require that step. So if you're going down the I want to really try the spellcasting route, you're going to also need this trance stuff. If you're going to follow my example where I say, well, you know what, dump all that stuff, keep the stuff that works, you don't need the trance stuff. Don't even worry about it. That's pretty much all I wanted to say about all that stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It really feels weird doing a video on occultism again. Who knows? Maybe I'll talk about this stuff more if enough people want to hear it. Till next time, safe travels.